This presentation will explain the requirements and restrictions for procuring goods and services using federal funds. For more information, applicants should reference the 2 CFR 200, also known as the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost, Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. This is available online by searching for 2 CFR 200. CDFA has also created a Procuring Goods and Services Guidance document with additional details available via a link under the Grant Proposal Supplement sections of the SCBGP website. Applicants may contract for services that cannot be provided by staff employed by their organization. Generally, these services are for short-term periods and provide a specific and identifiable product or service. Importantly, contracting does not change the applicant's overall responsibility for the management of this project. If awarded funds, applicants are responsible for ensuring their contractors and/or consultants comply with applicable federal regulations and requirements. Therefore, the applicant must reserve sufficient rights and control to enable it to fulfill its responsibilities for the project. As a minimum requirement, applicants must establish and follow a documented procurement policy. This policy must conform to applicable federal law and reflect applicable state, local, tribal laws and regulations. Please reference 2 CFR 200, Section 318 for additional information on general procurement standards. When selecting a contractor, applicants must use one of the procurement methods outlined in the complete list found in 2 CFR 200, Section 320. The next few slides will highlight the more common procurement methods. The first procurement example is micro-purchase, which is defined as an acquisition of supplies or services at or below the $10,000 micro-purchase threshold. Next is procurement by small purchase procedures. This is a relatively simple and informal procurement method, which may be used for securing services, supplies, or other property that does not cost more than the simplified acquisition threshold, which is currently $250,000. If small purchase procedures are used, price or rate quotations must be obtained from an adequate number of qualified sources. Note that the adequate number is not defined, as it depends on what makes sense for each procurement. If the procurement will be more than the simplified acquisition threshold, then a formal competitive bid process is required. For complete details of the competitive bid process, refer to 2 CFR 200, Section 320 in the Contractual Services Guidance document provided by the CDFA. The last method highlighted today is non-competitive procurement, which is also known as single-source bidding. This practice is appropriate for only a limited set of circumstances as described in 2 CFR 200, Section 320C. If awarded funds, applicants that anticipate using this procurement method should contact their assigned CDFA grant analyst before beginning the process. For any procurements in excess of simplified acquisition threshold, regardless of the procurement method selected, a cost or price analysis, which includes development of an estimate, is required prior to soliciting bids. There are generally 3 types of fee structures for contractual services: salary and wages, fees for professional services, and flat rate. For the fee structure, salaries and wages, costs are based on the actual salary or the hourly wage for anyone performing work under the contract. The distinction for this fee structure is that in addition to actual salaries, contracts may itemize charges into budget categories for fringe benefits, travel, scientific equipment, supplies, other costs, and indirect costs. When using the fees for professional services fee structure, an hourly rate is paid for services provided. This fee structure is common with for-profit organizations, such as marketing agencies. The rate does not necessarily reflect the actual salary of the person performing the contracted work and is typically inclusive of salary, fringe benefits, and overhead costs associated with services provided. Note that including otherwise unallowable costs within a fee for professional services is prohibited. An example of this would be indirect, often called overhead costs above the 8% maximum allowable. When using the flat rate fee structure, a predetermined rate is paid for services provided rather than payment based on the hours worked. If selecting a flat rate contractor, the applicant must provide a justification for the flat rate fee and demonstrate that the rate is reasonable and consistent with fees in the marketplace for similar services. Again, please note that including otherwise unallowable costs within a flat rate fee is prohibited. An example of a contractor that might use a flat rate fee is one with proprietary technology or one that provides a specialized service, such as designing apps. In some cases, prior approval from CDFA is required before selecting a contractor. Some common examples include selecting a contractor by non-competitive proposal or single source bidding, selecting a contractor with salaries, wages, or fees for professional services that exceed the general schedule grade 15, step 10, commonly referred to as the GS15 step 10 for the applicant's locality, or selecting a contractor that will utilize a flat rate fee structure. Should you be awarded funds, making changes to contractual services submitted in the grant proposal will also require prior approval. Some examples of this include selecting a contractor not already identified on the project application, scope of work, or changes in the fee structure of a previously approved contractor. For example, changing from a flat rate fee structure to a fee for professional services. In all cases, you must contact the assigned CDFA grant analyst for assistance. Finally, some specific documentation is required when using contractual services. Because all applicants that are awarded funds will be audited by the CDFA, it's important to maintain a copy of the organization's documented procurement policy and any records that show that the terms of the procurement policy were followed and that all costs conform to the cost principles. This was just a brief overview of the procedures for using contractual services. For more information, refer to 2 CFR 200, sections 318 through 320, and the Contractual Services Guidance document provided by the CDFA.